So now I want to figure out what the measure of an angle is. And if you've used my iPhone app, you've kind of probably already done this as far as figuring out what angles are what. But we know we can lay our protractor down on this and measure it. Now if I just lay it down, just plop it down and put the crosshairs in the middle on the vertex, I can still actually measure this very top angle here. I don't even have to turn it as long as I've got that crosshairs right in the center. What I can do is just figure out, well, where's one ray lie, what number, and where's the other one? And here it's about 28 around to 146 if I'm reading the inside numbers. And so I can subtract those two and figure out how big that is. But what we've really learned how to do is we rotate this around so we get one of those sides on there, and I find out, hey, that's about 120. So my numbers before weren't quite right. I guess maybe I didn't have it laying down there exactly right, but it was close to 120. When I've got this little close, easier to measure when you lay down this, which means that other one has to be 60. I don't even really have to measure it. I can look at the outside numbers, because on the far side where the 60 is, the 0 starts on the outside. I can read around the outside, I can see 60. But because that's a straight line, I know those numbers have to add up to 180. Now on the other side, I flip this around. I can read my inside numbers, and that one angle is 120, and that other little angle is 37, which means how big is that angle that's left over? So once again, I can subtract those two numbers, add those two numbers together, the 120 and the 37, subtract from 180 and find the 23, or I can use the protractor either how it's laying or rotate it around to figure out that last one is 23 degrees. Now this next slide, I don't really care if you know how big these numbers were. This is actually the exact same slide as before. But the point is, I know how to say, what is angle 1? What is angle 2? What is angle 3? And you could look at it, and if I said angle 1, you would say, oh, that's about 120. And if I said angle 2, you'd say, oh, that's about however much you think it is. But you know specifically which one I'm asking you about. And when they're labeled this way, it's very easy. But they're not always labeled this way. Sometimes they're labeled like this. Now this is still fairly easy. If I ask you the measure of angle A, and notice that little M down there, that means what's the measure of angle A, or the measure of angle C, you know what angle I'm talking about. So take a minute and figure out what you think those angles are. So the measure of angle A is approximately, I didn't say equal because I didn't actually measure it. It's approximately, that's the approximate sign. Looks like it's about 40 degrees to me. And the other one, it's obviously obtuse, so I'm going to guess it's about 120. Where it becomes more difficult is this situation. How big is angle F? And your first question should be, well, which angle F are you talking about? There's actually several angle F's here. I don't know which one you're talking about. So we use 3 letters when it's not obvious. The middle letter is always the vertex. So we'll always have the letter of what is obviously an angle, the vertex of an angle, anytime we refer to it. But in a more complicated question, there's more than one angle F in this case. So I have to give you some help to figure out which angle F are you talking about. I see an obtuse angle F here, I see an acute angle F here, and I actually see a straight angle F here. So which one are you talking about? And that's why we sometimes use 3 letters to help people communicate about which angle are we talking about. So angle DFE is about 110 degrees. That's the obtuse angle up there. So F's in the middle, that's the vertex, and the D and the E are the 2 sides that make up that obtuse angle. So pause it for a minute and see if you can figure out what the measure of angle DFK is. What is the angle of the measure of the angle DFK? That's right, DFK is the straight angle. It's from D through F and all the way to K. That's essentially the straight line, so it's 180 degrees. So take another moment and figure out the last 2 angles. How big is EFD, measure EFD, and how big is measure KFE? Now there's a bit of a trick question in here. It's not meant to be a trick question, but it will make you think. So take a minute to do that. So EFD is actually the same angle as DFE. It's just another way to name it. And you have to recognize this, that there's no magic order about which one has to come first. It's not alphabetical. It just has to be the angle in the middle is the vertex, and then the other two are just the ones on the sides. And then finally, that measure KFE is 70. If DFE is 110, KFE has to be 70. And finally, we just got a little bit of review. Once again, I got this off of wolfram.com, and there's a nice little story here about how did we get degrees. I talked in the very beginning about how did we get degrees, and we got degrees because somebody had to decide how we were going to break up a circle into parts, what we were going to measure turns in, or angles in, or whatever we want to call that. And the Babylonians had a calendar of 360 days, and that was a full cycle. And so they decided a circle is a full cycle, 360 days in a year. We're going to break up a circle into 360 degrees, and that's how we got our degrees. And that's what we've always used. In some cases it works fine. In other cases it would be better if a right angle was maybe 100 degrees, or a full circle was 100 degrees, or degrees were done differently. But that's just what we've always used. So finally, we have a little quiz for you here. So you may want to pause and go through this first, and I'll just talk about them for a minute. So first of all, can you figure out the straight angle's name? There's a straight angle here. How would you describe it to someone if you had to say the straight angle without saying the straight angle, like angle something? That's right, it's angle ABC, or if you said angle CBA, that would be correct. Angle B is not really correct here, because angle B, there's actually, I count 4 angle B's here. So it's either angle ABC or angle CBA. The right angle here is angle EBA, or angle ABE would be correct. And then go ahead and pause it again for a minute if you haven't done the last two. The approximate measure of angle DBE. Now this is approximate. I'm not going to measure it. I'm just kind of looking at it. If you put your protractor down on the screen, it may not be 70 degrees, but it looks like it's about 70 degrees there. And then angle EBC is a little bit of a trick question. That's 90 degrees. You might have been tempted to say 20 there because you weren't looking. You thought, what's he going to ask? I didn't ask for DBC, which would be 20 degrees. I asked for EBC, which is 90 degrees. So this has been a Mr. T production in conjunction with Nutrix Publishing, which is basically me. Good luck and good angles. Check out all my crazy iPhone apps by looking up Nutrix Publishing on the App Store, or you can visit my website at teachforever.net. That's teach, the number 4, and ever.net. Tell them Mr. T sent you.